स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः We haven't had this class in a while. So we'll chant 2, 3. We have to see the bhashya of that. धनुर्गृहीत्वा उपनिषदं महास्त्रम्
धनुर्गृहीत्वा उपनिषदं महास्त्रम्
शरं ह्युपासा निशिता सन्धयीत
शरं ह्युपासा निशितं सन्दयीत
आयम्य तद्भावगतेन चेतसा
आयम्य तद्भावगतेन चेतसा
लक्ष्यं तदेवाक्षरं सौम्य विद्धि
लक्ष्यं तदेवाक्षरं सौम्य विद्धि.
We have seen this in detail. We have seen the meaning of Om. We have looked at the whole way in which Om has been unfolded. Om means the Brahman has been, it's a lakshya, it's a indicator, or a word that indicates Brahman. Om, the meaning of the word Om is Brahman. We have seen how it is being unfolded in the Mandukya Upanishad. In here it is called Akshara, and we have seen this in great detail. And how it is, the word Om has been loaded, with a lot of meaning. It represents the Jagat, it transcends the Jagat as well. And if you don't remember all of this, go back last class, the class before and the class before, and you will see that I'm not making this up. In fact, it has been addressed. So go back and revise, and you will have it all on the fingertips of the mind. And so now, and we have also seen this particular verse word by word. Don't take my word for it. Go back again to the last class and see it would have been the case. So now we are going to look at what Adi Shankara says about this verse. I'm going to read. If you want, you can repeat. Dhanuhu Ishvasam Grihitva Adaya Aupanishadam Upanishadsu Bhavam Prasiddham Mahastram Mahacchatat Astrancha Mahastram Dhanuhu Tasmin Sharam Kim Vishishtam Iti Aha. Yeah, so he's basically explaining this word by word. He doesn't go into this in much detail as much as we did, because he reserves that for the next verse, which is also an unfolding of the same meditation on Om being the bow. It's a kind of a, what is that called? A visualization, a visualized meditation. The Upanishad is the bow, the mind is the arrow sharpened by the meditation on Om. The Upanishad, and then you place the mind sharpened, and the target is Om, the bow is Om, the arrow is Om, everything is Om, Om, Om. Yeah, and that is what was little confusing. That's why the Upanishad has one more verse to talk about. First it sets up the imagery here that we have seen, and in the next verse it talks, in the next mantra, it talks about actually discharging the bow, discharging the arrow from the taut bow and hitting the target, and what that looks like. First of all, where is the target? Who is the hitter? Who is the warrior here? And all these things, very interesting. So here, Adi Shankara doesn't think that it requires so much, explanation as much as we have gone into, because he knows that you have already, he assumes that you have read the bhashya of other Upanishads which talk about this, like Kathopanishad, he assumes you have studied, which is studied before the Mundaka Upanishad, and there also Omkara is discussed in detail. Om ityevaksharam brahma etadalambanam param etadalambanam hi jnatva brahmaloke mahiyate. All this, he assumes that everyone's memory and everyone's mind is just like his. So, he is giving you the benefit of doubt and thinking that yes, I don't have to, tell all this. I just have a few lines I can finish off, make short shrift of this bhashya, of this mantra, no problem. And, we'll have other things to talk about, in the next one. So he reserves the longer bhashya for the next one. And here, it's nothing we have not outside of what we have seen. He says, Dhanuhu Ishvasanam, meaning the Dhanuhu means the bow. Ishvasanam is another word for that. So he says that Adaya, Adaya means having, what's that? Adaya, having strung in this case, or drawing, rather, we saw last time, withdrawing. Drawing means withdrawing from everything else, and so all this we'll see more in the next verse. But here he says, Adaya simply means holding, taking the bow, holding the bow. And holding means you have to hold it in a taut way. You can't just hold it, lying down. And so, Adaya, holding it properly. And Aupanishadam here he explains, Upanishad Subhavam, Tadhita, a particular kind of a suffix. Aupanishadam, Upanishadsu Bhavam. See, you can either make, from the standpoint of the grammar, you can make, from the root verbs, you can make nouns and verbs, correct? And then when you take the noun and make it into another noun, that is tadhita. It's like a second kind of a, it's like a secondary noun based on certain suffixes. So, Aupanishadam, Upanishadsu Bhavam, born of the Upanishad. So, what is the, bow? The bow is something that is born of the Upanishad. What is born of the Upanishad? Yeah? What? What is the bow is born of the Upanishad. So, what does the bow signify? What is born of the Upanishad? Brahman. Yeah. Oh, Brahman was born? I never thought. Born means given. Yeah. So this knowledge comes from the Upanishad because it cannot be had any other way. So this knowledge that is born of the Upanishad, and the knowledge is not separate from the subject matter, which is Brahman. So the bow is Aupanishadam, and Aupanishadam means what? Born of the Upanishad. So the bow is born of the Upanishad, is the knowledge of Brahman, born of the Upanishad. So Brahman, the bow signifies Brahman. And he says it is Mahastram. The Upanishad says that, and he delineates the compound, Mahan Chatat, Astram, Mahat Chatat Astram Cha it's a kind of a compound that is called karmadharya. And then what does it do? It talks about how the astra, that which is thrown, and I told you last time it's actually shastra, but here it is poetic license. The bow is not thrown. It's not that you keep the arrow and throw the bow. It's the other way around. But here astra is called. Astra means that which you throw, but here the bow itself is called astra. Because ultimately you give up even the om, you are the om. You become the om, quote unquote. And, so therefore, this astra is mahat. Mahat means it is the final thing. I told you last time, it's like an atom bomb. After atom bomb, what is there? Only cockroaches. Nothing else survives. Yeah. So, this atom bomb is much, more powerful than the real atom bomb. This is Atma. This reveals, it's a bomb that just, what's that? When it detonates, it reveals the Atma. It's the final weapon. And the weapon, because one is at war with oneself. Yeah. One is always at war with oneself. That's why all this imagery in the Bhagavad Gita of war, and here it's a weapon, because why is the weapon needed? To kill something, to put an end to something. And what are we putting an end to? This little, chatterbox here, keeps on looking and keeps on finding fault and keeps on, wanting to graze in the objects of the senses, and then wanting to keeps feeling it's insecure, keeps wanting to collect things, and it's, hurt at the drop of a hat, and it's always misunderstanding and steeped and dipped, like a tea bag in its own subjectivity, stewing in the juices of its own subjectivity, this mad mind. This is mind means this whole antahkarana is there. Is talked about. And so this antahkarana is so this is at war with itself. Whatever you give, I didn't want that. No, but you need it. Well, I don't need that. Who needs this knowledge? Nobody needs this knowledge. I'm fine as I am. Okay, be fine. Then why do you have to come and tell me you are fine? If you're really fine, you don't need to come and tell me, correct? That I'm fine without this knowledge. Who says I'm fine without this knowledge? The one who is fine or not fine? Yeah, the one who is fine, not fine. And one who is unfine, correct? Yeah. And who is unfine? The one who is confined in this whole kind of a, rigmarole of this circular thinking, I'm not okay. And so everything is a defense mechanism. You can't tell anybody anything without them, all the defenses being up. Everything, astra is out, shastra is out. And the Upanishad says, if you are so fond of astras and shastras, let me give you one astra, one weapon that will put to rest all your weaponry. Inside is an arsenal of defenses, offenses, all kinds of things that make, life not worth living. So miserable one becomes. Because, you have to keep these weapons in order. And you have to decide mentally who is going to get the bomb, who is going to just get a scratch, one claw, and who is going to get a kind of a rain shower of arrows, slings and arrows of fortune. Who is going to, this one is, little mild, just a little biff, should be enough, he'll keep away. The other one, when I see them coming to the door, I just, I barricade the door, but from the other side, I start attacking them. So this us versus them mentality gives the need for, because of this arises the need for protection. Because one feels insecure, there's already someone who is other than me. Me? Not yet me. That should be the Vedantin's view. But usually it is us and them. Us means usually there'll be, few other people, significant other on good days, and then what else, and included, dog, cat, family members, house, little fenced yard, and then this is it. Beyond this, everything else is out to get me. This is the classic Jiva's mechanism, Jivik mechanism. Yeah, makes you feel like saying ik. That's why it is Jivik. Very, very silly. And how strange. I mean, we see this in the country. Here people don't talk. The gun has got all the talk. The gun talks, and then they talk. Then first they shoot, and then they say, "Show me your license and registration." This is what it is. The first thing they do is open fire, and then of course, then there'll be protests, because again the whole demarcation of us and them, and then that protest again, the protesters have a different idea of us and them than the original perpetrators, and then the war goes on, and that war really starts here, ends here also. Really, this is what has to be taken care of. Inside is a raging battlefield between concepts, between opposing ideologies, between the subjectivity that one carries and the objectivity that one is drawn to. One is drawn to that which is true. One is drawn to that which is real, but yet one is steeped in subjectivity. And one is falling apart, and so this penchant for weaponry is not new. In the olden days also, I told you, they had smart bombs, missile, mantra-powered missiles, and like missiles with people's names written on it. I have told you all this. All this was there in the beginning as well, because guess what? Human nature does not change. At least not without Vedanta. Does not change. Because if you tell someone, give up these defense mechanisms, they will say, you know what, and then become a weakling, and then be completely oppressed by society. I'm not okay because there are so many things other than me, greater than me. You see, this is the fear. And so the Upanishad, this is a very beautiful, these two mantras are very beautiful, because the Upanishad knows the futility of trying to argue with this person with an inner arsenal, the one who is at war with oneself, and therefore the one who is at war with everyone else. This is the problem. And so you can't, if you argue with someone, they're going to just use the gun. And if not the real gun, they're going to blow you off mentally. And so therefore they're not going to listen to you. Correct? And so the Upanishad is a very, the pedagogy is so beautiful here. And it's just like if a baby is playing with a cleaver or something like that. This is all, I have seen this. I went to somebody's house for bhiksha, a 2-year-old, they had left a cleaver, a big knife, hanging on the counter, and it was on its tippy toes, and then it grabbed the cleaver. The cleaver is almost as big as him, and he's running with it, and it was a very frightening sight, Almighty Tiksha left. I had to stop the class, and then I had to say that, I think there is danger here, and he's not giving it back. Sharp edge thing, and he can hurt himself. And so they had to bring a toy sword they had to quickly look in his toy box, and there was some kind of a toy sword which had some flashing light and all. They turned first the battery was gone, they put a new battery, turned it on, and it saw the red and white flashing lights, and then it dropped the cleaver and took that. This is how it is. One is a danger to oneself because one is carrying this weaponry of distrust, mistrust, and us and them attitude, and the will and the desire to really blow off everybody and everything that's not me, and that me is so small that even if the whole world were to be annihilated at this point in time, that me is not going to grow bigger. It's not going to grow. So therefore, this astra is given. A new astra is given. Just think of that baby running around with a cleaver, Yeah, that cleaver means, how these professional chefs in 5-star hotels, like when they chop the onion, you can't see the finger, you can't see the onion, you just go like this, onion or anything, they are faster than the food processor. That kind of a sharp thing, it was holding on. And since everybody said drop it, it was holding it on tighter. So just like that child, all the jivas are like this child who is, who picked this up out of ignorance. So out of ignorance one develops an arsenal of defenses. Yeah. And that defense, and this is something, I'm waxing eloquent on because, because it needs to be addressed. Think about yourself in the everyday conversations. Half of the time is gone in defending oneself. No, I didn't do this. No, but you did do this. No, but I may have done it, but I didn't mean it. Nobody is saying you meant it. No, but I didn't say you didn't mean it. I didn't say you meant it, but I just thought I'll explain. Nobody is wanting your explanation. No, I think the explanation is in order. This is how, in fact, all the relationships in one's life are based on these defense mechanisms. You think of parents and child, that's a classic example. The parent says something and the child has already the defenses. And the teenagers will say, talk to the hand. They have a new definition of Abhaya Mudra. Talk to the hand, don't talk to me. If you're going to start telling me what not to do, the mind has already been turned off. Not listening, they'll go back and forth like this, not listening. This is a defense, not listening is a defense. And you see this with couples all the time, The person has hardly put a word in the mind and it's about to come out of the mouth. No, you are wrong. I know what you're going to say, but it doesn't matter. I know not only do I know what you're going to say, I know what you're going to think, and it's a waste of my time to listen to it, and so there, it's shut down. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So mentally, we have pistols in the head which shoot down other people's ideas, thoughts and everything. And it's just, this is how it is. There are defense mechanisms in every conversation which are regurgitated, reenacted ad nauseum. And if one is feeling slightly sick, it is... It is because of this. Nauseous feeling will come. All the time explaining, this is samsara. It gives one a headache. It really gives one a headache because think of all the shanti you can have if you desisted from this behavior. Really. You point out something and somebody almost always, nearly always takes it amiss. Amiss or a mister, depending on the person. You take it amiss, and that person gives a litany of explanation, an arsenal of explanations, which are all defensive. And if you look into those explanations, it's all to say, I am not at fault. And why is this big arsenal deployed? Because whatever, even if somebody says, it's a cloudy day, immediately the defense, I didn't have anything to do with it. Did I say you had anything to do with it? No, but in case you meant it, I better clear off everything. So this is subjectivity. This is the inability to see what the other person is trying to say. If an omission is pointed out, it needs to be corrected. That's all. That's an objective response. oh, this hasn't happened, let me fix it, let me correct it. Simple. That's an objective response. And the subjective response is to make excuses, to mount all kinds of defenses. You have you have all kinds, you have a drone, because that all those defenses sound like a droning thing. And then you have a tanker, you have all kinds of things. In other words, you make the other person so tired and shut the person down so that they will never, quote unquote, accuse you in the future. Hello, they were not accusing you right now to begin with. Think of the image of the baby, the toddler with the cleaver. Yeah, that's all it is. Because ultimately, one is cutting oneself up. In the beginning, there is this feeling, I have shut that person down. Yippee, I won this argument. But you lost the war. You lost the war against samsara. No, but I won this argument. I am paramount. I shut the other person off. But yes, in the process, you are also shut down. You are also totally shut down. Because you are exhausted, you are more exhausted than the other person. The other person at least has a chance to leave the premises and be free of all your listening to your defenses. But what about you? You have to live with yourself, because all that weaponry which is dangerous to the world and dangerous to yourself is carried in the head. It's not that the Upanishad is bloodthirsty and is telling you, because the Upanishad can also say, oh, why don't you aim like a flower? It can, it can use the bow, but what kind of bow? Cupid's bow. That's also a bow. But Cupid's arrow is pushpam, flower. Yeah, like, Why not use that? Because the Upanishad is all flowery, loving, beautiful, because that doesn't work. Because, for that love to come in the heart, the weaponry has to be dropped. The love is already there. Poor thing, that love, that compassion and the truth of one's nature is shrouded by this army of, subjectivity. All these soldiers in the form of the unconscious soldiering on, and this weaponry of defense and offense mechanisms that are not necessary at all. That needs to be dropped. And so the Upanishad is replacing the cleaver with a inoffensive, and a useful, imagery in the form of Om. Here, let me take that. You have this bow. So the inner child thinks, oh, this also I can wage a war. Sure, go for it. And then the imagery therefore deployed is one of warfare, because one is trying to conquer things within, and also one is at war with oneself. So for those reasons. And Adi Shankara says that this is a final mahat. He explains what the Upanishad says, that there are so many different forms of weaponry. But this is the ultimate weapon. After this, you will not need any other weapons. No more defenses, no more offenses. This is the final one. Oh, thank God, wonderful. And then what? Then he says that, dhanuhu tasmin sharam. So, what is the mahastram? The bow and the arrow. The arrow drawn within it, both of those are called together mahastram. So what is so special about this? Iti aha, this is being said. So what is so special about this weaponry that is going to bring down all my defenses and offenses and stop the inner war and thereby the outer war? What is so special about this? Let us listen. Upasa nishitam shantata abhidhyanena tanukritam samskritam iti etat. So why is this bow and arrow special than what I can buy at the toy shop or at the at the defense mechanism shop. And what is so special? The specialty is that the arrow is sharpened. It's not a blunt arrow. Because if you at the toy shop, you get a blunt arrow which will not harm anyone, and it's of no use, because this is the Mahastram is needed for a Maha problem. Yeah, because the Maha problem has to match the Mahastram. The Astram here is solution, if a sparrow is, you have just planted some flower seeds because you saw the rains and thought it will be nice to have some flower seeds, and then you find a sparrow is digging it up and eating the seeds, you will not come with a big, you will not come with a big thing to kill the sparrow, correct? So, you want to drive the sparrow away, just a simple shoo is enough. Poor thing is already got a little heart that's beating so fast, it will run away, it will fly away. So, to make the sparrow vacate your newly sown garden, you don't need a big, what is that? Blunderbuss. You don't need a big, huge thing to whack it on the head or to, shoot it. So the Mahastram is needed when there is a huge, let's say one of those early raptors came to life. Sparrow is also a raptor, yeah. It's a descendant of a raptor, but it's a mere small little thing, You are 100 times bigger than the sparrow. But let's say one of those flying things that end in us, them. Certainly not us, very much them. And for that you cannot say, and it's come and it's looking hungrily at you, and it's lunchtime, you cannot say shoo, correct? You cannot say shoo, go away from here. It says you go away, you come here, It will not go away. It needs some big remedy. So inside is a big raptor. In the form of Ajnanam, and the spin-off of Ajnanam is all kinds of insecurities, fears, tears, and then the overlay on that is all kinds of defense mechanisms. So you need a Mahastram, and the Mahastram is the bow and arrow together. What is the specialty? It's a very finely sharpened bow, because the sharpened bow will hit the target. A blunt bow will just fall off. So, sharpened with what? Upasana. Upasa. Nishitam. Upasana is the meditation. It includes fasting. It includes all kinds of preparation. But here, especially meditation. All the religious or the spiritual austerities to prepare the mind. So a mind that is prepared to drop the defense mechanisms will drop the defense mechanism. A mind that is prepared to end this war will end this war. This internal battle with oneself. So how is the mind prepared? Meditation, like in the olden times they used to put the tip of the arrow in some water and then sharpen it on a stone. Even now, that they do for the knife, it's a nicer version of that, a more mechanized version of that, that's all. Still, a stone is needed to sharpen that, and a wet stone conducts that very well and sharpens the edges. So, the sharpening, you cannot just go one stroke like this and say, okay, now it's ready to deploy. No. Okay, maybe 3 strokes. No. So similarly, if I have one meditation session, today I woke up in a good mood, everything was wonderful, and the thought came, an original thought, never had before thought, original for me. What was that? I think, meditate, ayami, dhyayami. Who, me? Yes, me, dhyayami. I meditate, I had that thought. Here I am meditating. Oh, what a wonderful meditation. And I meditated. Felt wonderful. Just before class. Wow, what a nice thing. And then what happened? Couldn't find the car keys. What happened to the Shanti? All gone. Yeah. Shanti is all gone. Why? Because I was stressed, couldn't find the car keys. And then you could have just taken it online, didn't think of it, because I was so angry. Angry after meditation, exactly. So, why am I angry after meditation? That means the meditation did not work. No, that's not the conclusion to draw. So, why am I angry after meditation? Huh? Because I was angry before meditation. Simple. Only the angry person can get angry. So why am I sad after meditation? Same answer. Before meditation also I was sad. So that means the meditation ding ding does not work. No. That is not a good conclusion to draw. Why? Why is this not a good conclusion to draw that the meditation is not working? Because you cannot make a conclusion based on something that needs to be done repeatedly after having done it once. Like even the sharpening of this knife, arrow, whatever it is. So even the knife, when you sharpen it, you have to keep going back and forth for a length of time until you see the results. So until that anger, one has a mechanism of being able to handle it, until one can manage the anger in non-meditative situations, until then one meditates. Yeah, and then also the meditation becomes a delight, really. Until the sadness is gone, until it can be, understood completely. And before that, until it can be managed, one meditates. So therefore, you cannot say that the sharpening of the arrow is going to happen like that. It's a process, and you have to give yourself that process in order to prepare the mind, because the prepared mind alone can go to Brahman and hit the target, so to speak. Because I'm trying to hit everyone, including me. So Upanishad says, hit Brahman. Here, let me take away all your weaponry. And taking the weaponry is how to drop the weaponry. The arsenal is through meditation. That's what is sharpening the mind, dropping the offensive and defensive mechanisms through a process, of meditation. And that meditation sharpens the desire for this knowledge, sharpens the acumen, sharpens the alertness, sharpens the dedication, and sharpens the preparation, all these things. And then one is ready for the knowledge. And when one is ready for the knowledge, obviously the knowledge is going to take place very, very quickly. And then further he says, Samskritam, Tanukritam means sharpened. What is sharpened? Samskritam, meaning everybody studies Sanskrit. Yeah. What does it mean? Civilized. Yes. Be civilized. No, I wear very good clothes. I have a nice hairdo and I wear nice clothes. And then, what is that? Perfume. And I'm very civilized. In fact, I'm the best dressed in my set. I have a great sense of fashion, a wonderful sense of design, a great color coordination. There's no one more civilized than I. If that were civilization, even a broomstick wearing a sari would be civilized. Yeah. In America there is that putting the lipstick on the pig, correct?
Yes.
There is a statement, an idiom. So when you put the lipstick on the pig, it continues to be pig or no? It is pig with lipstick. So we have our own version, because we don't say broomstick and lipstick, that's silly, So we, instead of lipstick, we have broomstick wearing Kanjivaram sari. Yeah. So you dress the broomstick in a nice sari with gold gilded border, and then you put it as a prop in the party. Hand it a drink also, fruit juice, mango juice. Is it going to look civilized? No. A broomstick in a sari is still a broomstick in a sari. Why this broomstick image came? Because when we have like any kind of a religious function, the first thing that is done is Nandi. Nandi means invoking the ancestors. And so for this ritual, to invoke the ancestors and to gain Bhagavan's grace, the goddess is invoked along with the ancestors. The ancestors are invoked in the form of the goddess with a broomstick, which is dressed up, new broomstick, not the one that we use every day. And in a sari. But still it's leaning there somewhere after all the puja is done, feeling sorry for itself in a sari, and it's still a broomstick in a sari. So those outward accoutrements of civilization do not make a civilized person according to the Shastra. You can be Sanskritam supposedly outside with all these poof things, things in the hair, things on the clothes, all these things. And potions and lotions can make you civilized outside. But the Shastra says the potions and notions potions and lotions don't make you civilized. It's when you drop all the subjective notions that is the degree of civilization. A subjective person is an uncivilized person reacting out of instinct rather than wisdom. And that instinctual reaction, somebody is out to get me all the time, somebody is out to blame me, and then they will, and if they know a little bit of psychology, it's a travesty. Because then they'll say, well, you should have known better because I've had a bad childhood. And so because of this bad childhood, of course I'll react. So you don't make me react. All I said is that it's a cloudy day. Well, that's causing a reaction. You should know better. You can't tell the other person. That's also a deployment of, wrong knowledge, inadequate knowledge, subjective understanding. And so the one who says that because of my childhood I have these issues and therefore I am like this, has accepted those issues as Satyam. There is no place for Brahman as Satyam because those issues are paramount. If you don't have any issue with your issues, it's a problem. Yeah. One should be able to say that, okay, this is not I. These are things that happen to me. And when will I be ready to let go of them? When will I be ready to let go of the past and not develop new arsenal in the present in order to protect the past? That really doesn't exist. Vedanta makes a repast out of the past. That is its glory. Awesome. Wonderful. And therefore, this has to be properly understood. And so therefore, Adi Shankara says, upasanaya nishikritam tanukritam, sharpened how? Samskritam. Sharp means alert, inner alertness to all those little ghouls and goblins inside waiting to come out. That alertness stops the reactivity and stops the tamas. What is tamas?
Tamas.
Yeah. Tamas means not much is happening and I like how I am. This is how it is. It will never get any better, so why even try? Sounds like a good idea, right? Wrong. So Samskritam means I become more matured. Emotional maturity comes when that subjectivity is dropped. That's why Adi Shankara loves this word, Samskritam. And then as opposed to Prakritam. Prakritehe iyam, idam, Prakritam means born of nature. Born of nature means that the quote-unquote natural tendency. What is the tendency? The tendency is to be at war with oneself. The tendency is to be at war with everyone else. The tendency is to be offensive and defensive. The tendency is to stop is to not do what is correct, what I need to be doing, and is to do other things. The tendency is to get hooked on to everything that is available instead of the truth of myself. So these tendencies, one naturally means without the operation of the free will, one goes towards these tendencies, just like the animals go towards their tendencies as though, because they are programmed. So here one is behaving as though one is programmed. Oh, this is my past, I can't change it. That's being programmed by the past. And that's why I'm like this. It's an explanation perhaps, but never an excuse for one's behavior in the present, because you have free will. You have the ability to overcome this. You have the ability, you have the resources, you have the strength, you have the help. You have to go get it. And so therefore, the hold of the past or the hold of something hurtful cannot be an excuse for the next 7 lifetimes. Yeah, and people will say, last life also I must have been like that. And they'll go to some sidekick posing as a psychic. And then what will they say? The psychic, oh, it's because this pain is from 2 lifetimes ago. You were beaten up. Yeah, and then everything that one does because of 2 lifetimes ago. Were you there? Did you see what happened? And let's say even if that were true, but you are going to hold on to something that happened 2 lifetimes ago? What is more powerful, that which happened or you? You are the subject, that which happened is an object. And so, when the free will is not used for emotional maturity and to gain a perspective, an objectivity, then one continues to remain prakrita, one is not samskrita. One can be dressed up, still broomstick. Yeah. Exactly. And broomstick with the human mind, will have its own problems. People never look at me except once a day. And then, I am just engaged in removing all the dust and the dirt. Nobody appreciates me. And then when they are done with me, they throw me away. All these things, And then all those thoughts are not going to change when it dawns on an expensive sari. Yeah. So therefore, here also, if you think you can become civilized by wearing a costly set of clothes, very, very sorry. Yeah. So, sharpened means inner alertness and the readiness to override what has happened in the past. Not letting the past get in the way. And for that reason, what is there, what is talked about here is the preparedness. And it's a catch-22. Until one is ready to let go of the past, one is not ready to meditate. Until one meditates, one is not ready to let go of the past. So don't wait for this impasse and, use the free will to override, the tendency. So, samskritam iti etat. Sandhiyata sandhanam kuryat. And then what else? Sandhaya cha ayamya akrishya Sendriyam antahkarana svavishayat nivartya lakshya eva arjitam kritva ityarthah nahi hasteneva Dhanusha ayamana dhanushi ayamana iha sambhavati ayaman iha sambhavati tadbhavagatena तद्भावगतेन
तद्भावगतेन
तस्मिन् ब्रह्मणि
तस्मिन् ब्रह्मणि
अक्षरे लक्ष्ये
अक्षरे लक्ष्ये
भावना
भावना
भावः
भावः
तद्गतेन
तद्गतेन
चेतसा
चेतसा
लक्ष्यं
लक्ष्यं
तदेव
तदेव
यथोक्त
यथोक्त
लक्षणं
लक्षणम्
अक्षरम्
अक्षरं
सौम्य विद्धि.
सौम्य विद्धि.
Yeah. So then ayamya means drawing, sandhiyata means fixing. Okay, so fixing, so sandhiyata sandhanam kuryat. He's not even explaining it too much. Fixing, there's nothing to explain about fixing. Fixing what? The bow in where the arrow. Sandhaya cha ayamya pulling akrishya. So drawing, and he explains drawing is actually withdrawing, because this is a Upanishad, is a, the bow is a visualized bow, it's not a real bow, so you can't really draw. So what do? Withdraw the mind from all other preoccupations, pursuits, etc. And here a mistake can be made, and a mistake is made even by Vedanta teachers who say that in order to get to Brahman, everything must be given up. All the longings must be given up, then the belongings must be given up. Or first give up the belongings, then give up the longings. And then what are you? Ing, that's all. And and then only Brahman will come. Everything has to be given up. And then when everything is given up, Brahman will come, because Brahman is jealous. And as long as you have a popsicle in your hand, Brahman is going to say, enjoy the popsicle, I'm not coming near you. Because you love the popsicle more than me. People think of like this as Bhagavan also. Bhagavan will not come unless everything, surrender this, surrender that, surrender. Surrender is okay. Give up this, give up that, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up. And then and then people give up only Vedanta after this. Nothing else is given up except the next Mundakopanishad class. Mental resolve is made. I am going to give that. Sankalpa has been made. Yes, I'm ready to give up. What am I giving up? You as the teacher. Give up the teacher, give up this stupid class that tells me to give up everything. Yes. Because what else to do? How to give up everything. And how to give up the longing. If you say, I'm going to give up every longing, the desire to give up the longing becomes, you're stuck with that longing. I shouldn't have any desires. The only desire I should have is to not have any desires. And how am I going to get rid of that desire when, Then I should have the desire to get rid of the desire to not have desires. Then I should have the desire to get rid of the desire to have no desires. Like this, it becomes an infinite regress. And so the only thing that's given up is Vedanta, which people do regularly. And that's how it is. One drops off like a fly. They say a fly lives only for a day. Wrong, because if anyone has had the experience of one being trapped in the house, it lives forever. Really. Does not live for a day. But anyhow, even if, let's assume that's to be true, fly lives like a day, for a day, and then it drops off, correct? And so too mumukshutvam lives for a day, for the length of one class. Oh yes, I'm going to do everything different. First I'm going to sit up straight, and then after that I'm going to, take charge of my life. I'm going to get rid of this, that, everything. Starting with a significant other. I'm going to give up from A to Z, everything. And then what am I going to do? Meditate for 23 hours a day. What about sleep? I'll go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Come back and meditate again. And this kind of a sankalpa is made initially. It's called soda bottle enthusiasm. You twist the cap off and everything happens. First it's shaken up inside because the person who is coming to Vedanta is shaken up inside. Otherwise no one comes to Vedanta. Little bit of shake-up is dodhuya manam, what is that? Viveka Chudamani says. Frequentative, repeatedly shaken about, duradrishtavataihi, by the bad winds of papa, bad fortune. One is shaken about, and then the student suddenly is born. Until then, student, schmudent, what is this, one is not dented by anything. So, there is a process here. And so then, the mumukshutvam is suddenly born. And then one delights in it. And one buys the meditation cushion. And one buys the meditation bell. And a little cushion for the meditation bell. And ding, 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 one goes. And then what happens? Ding, ding, this is not working. Why? That hopelessness which was there takes over. From the past has come like an eclipse, on the sun, like the sunny disposition to study Vedanta has been overwhelmed by something else. And so therefore what? Therefore all that first we have to learn to keep at bay. Otherwise one drops off from the classes, from the pursuit like a fly. That's why the Samaveda Shanti Mantra, Maham Brahma Nirakuryam, Mama Brahma Nirakarot, Anirakaranamastva Nirakaranam Me Astu. Repeat this every day. Doesn't matter what prayer you say, these 3 lines you repeat, really, it will bless. So one drops off. One drops off like a fly because, one is overwhelmed by everything that one is not. Either positively or negatively. Positively because one has too many pursuits, and this becomes one more pursuit because one doesn't understand that this is you. And when that artificial distinction is made between us and them, then this becomes one more pursuit. Do you see the connection? Because there are so many pursuits. And I have to drop everything and take up this. How is that going to happen? So this is also one more pursuit, that means. If I have to drop something in order to take this up, then there is a shortage. So then how am I going to understand withdrawing? That's why withdrawing is not dropping. We have to understand this very clearly. Withdrawing the mind, not sendriyam, along with the sense organs. Indriyena saha, along with the sense organs, withdrawing the mind. The classical example that is given is just, like don't see anything, don't go after the sense objects. Here the person is helpless. How to not go? That's not the point. Withdrawing the mind and the sense objects from seeing them as separate from Bhagavan, from Brahman. That is the idea. Otherwise, one is in peril because there is another duality that is posited instead of this duality that I am already battling with. Already I feel alone. Already I feel the world is against me, situated against me. And I feel alone. And so what do? I battle with myself. I have offensive and defense mechanisms. We have seen that. And now what do? I have to withdraw from everything. Again I am alone. The only thing I will withdraw from is Vedanta classes, really. And so that's not the idea. The idea is to be able to withdraw the mind and the senses from business as usual. From the usual Dvaita way of looking at situations, people, circumstances, events and objects. From seeing all these things are nothing but other than me. That's where one is getting to. And so the relative preparation has already to be there. And the withdrawal is from that subject-object duality. You withdraw the mind from objectifying everything. And that's a very big thing. So even if somebody is rushing at you with verbal abuses, or you think that, let the mind just calm down, and then you see the person as non-separate from Bhagavan and you see, okay, what do I have to learn in this situation? Minus the offenses and the defenses. And so that means being honest with one's fears and having a commitment to take care of those fears before one can, get to this, before one can enjoy and assimilate this knowledge, so that one doesn't drop off in the pursuit. So, Maham Brahma Nirakarot, may I never deny or turn my face against Brahman, away from Brahman. Mama Brahma Nirakuryam, Mama Brahma Nirakarot, may Brahman never turn its face against me. Why will Brahman turn its face? Because it's my own projection. I have turned away. I can't, but still I have managed to say there is no Brahman and, I have turned away. Anirakaranam astu, let there be no denial of this oneness that pervades everything on my part. Anirakaranam me astu, let there be no denial of oneness for me. And for that I need preparation. Tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmas te magi santu, te magi santu. So all the preparations, all the dharmas, the attributes of growing into a Samskrita Purusha, into a person who is prepared, let those abide in me, let those abide in me. This is what the prayer is. So therefore, because, there is many slips, and so therefore, withdrawing the mind from this usual subject-object, relationship. Everything else is anatma, I am alone atma, I am the object, and everything else is, I am the subject, everything else is object, and I am incomplete, and then I'm going to get at those objects in order to make me fulfilled. This is a problem. And so, overcoming this problem is to be able to see everything as Brahman, starting with this here. And so, that is why drawing means withdrawing, and he explains. Why is it withdrawing? It is withdrawing because this is not a real bow. Svavishayat, nivartya lakshya evarjitam kritva ityartha nahi hasteneva dhanushi ayaman iha sambhavati. So you cannot, what is that? You cannot, it cannot be dhanushi, it is dhanushaha. Nahi hasteneva dhanushaha ayaman iha sambhavati. It's not a bow that you can hold. Why? Because it's a visualized imagery. Correct? Yeah. So, tad bhava gatena means tad bhava, he explains as tasmin, 7TP, Saptami Tatpurusha. So, tasmin brahmani, in that Brahman, which is what? The signature word for this Upanishad is what? Aksharam. So, in this Aksharam, which is the target, in the Lakshye, in this target, bhavana means bhavaha, meaning becoming one with it. Tad bhava gatena chetasa lakshyam tadeva yathokta lakshanam aksharam somya vidhi. Please know, by becoming one with it. Tadeva aksharam. So who is the target? You. Who is the weapon? You. Yeah. And the mind is absorbed in Brahman, not in the thought of Brahman. Bhava here is, he describes bhava as bhava, bhavana as tadbhava. Bhava as bhavana. Bhavana means a devotion. So here Brahman is what? Bhagavan. So it is a devotion where because the mind is absorbed in this devotion, so one has a devotional view of the whole universe. And that is gained through meditation, which is a form of prayer. Right? Yeah. So we'll take a short break, 5-10 minutes, come back. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम.